All right, I haven't done a panic index in a while. It's been almost 2 months since I did a panic index, and I've been trying to spread them out more this year than last year. And last year there was more changes in terms of panic levels as the season wore on. This year it doesn't feel like it's as much, and I think it's the way the schedule is put together. Right, you've got just games against the other 6 or 7 teams in the division, and things haven't changed that much. So I didn't feel like, we needed another panic index every 2 weeks like I would do during the regular season. And now I've got these teams in a random order. So there you go. Now we've got happiness, we've got panic. I've also added right here angry. This is beyond panic. This is just angry. And then this is everything's on fire. So this is for everything's on fire. I'm wearing buffalo for an unrelated reason. This is just the questioning emoji of we're not just confused and maybe torn on how to feel about how this season's gone so far. And then here, this is the sleepy emoji for wake me up when the playoffs are done and we can get the draft going. Because there are certain teams that right now are looking at the standings going, yeah, just wake us up when we get to the draft. So again, in a random order, not alphabetical. We're starting off with the Islanders. The Islanders, I'll put them in relatively happy. Now, with the loss of Anders Lee being arguably their best goal scorer, it does cause some issues, and their schedule from here is really tough. They have a lot of games left against the top teams in the East. We're going to find out where the Islanders are at over the next month, right? So for the Islanders, I have them as pretty happy. They're up near the top of the league. Next up is Buffalo. And it's hard not to have Buffalo and everything's on fire. Because it is. And so for Sabres fans, I understand. I think it's beyond panic. I think it's beyond anger. And we're just into everything is on fire. Just that's where we're at. 18 games. And inventing new ways to lose. And there you go. Detroit, I think, is still firmly under wake us up when the draft hits. I don't think there's much they could go on a little bit of a winning streak here. They're not going to end up in the playoffs clearly. And Steve Yzerman, I think, is just working on what he's going to do in the draft and how he's going to bring in guys like Sider and Raymond next year and how that's going to work and what he's going to be adding to the team as well on top of that. So Detroit, I think, is just waiting till the draft, and any wins they get between now and then, not too shabby. Philadelphia is pretty close to the panic side of this right now. The way that they got shellacked by the New York Rangers is a wake-up call, and now they find themselves in a position where they're kind of fighting it out for 5th with the Rangers. They're supposed to be fighting it out for 4th, but it feels like they're fading. The good news is the Bruins seem to be kind of fading as well. So, right, we'll see how that turns out. Capitals. I think Capitals are pretty darn happy. I think Capitals fans will be pretty happy about the way things are going right now. And yes, I'm using some of the old logos, because why not? The Washington Capitals have been a very interesting story this year. And I have no idea what's going to happen in the playoffs. They could fizzle out in the first round. They could get annihilated. They could go through and win the division and end up in the semifinals, and then who knows? I could see that going either way. And Ovechkin's picking up his scoring. Their goaltending's been good enough to get them victories. Is it going to be good enough in the playoffs? That's the question mark. And so Washington, though, I think is pretty happy right now. San Jose, I'm going to put them under question, the questioning side of things. So they're not so far out of the playoffs right now that San Jose should be, just selling everything off. But they're also not close enough that they should be buying at the deadline either. And if you're a fan, depending on the night, some nights they look really good. Some nights they look terrible. And again, with that game against Arizona, you could argue that into maybe the panic side of things. But again, it's just kind of up in the air. What are the Sharks going to rebuild? Are they going to retool? This whole, we're going to go with the younger guys. Does that mean something towards a rebuild? Because Carlson's not interested in it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in San Jose. And I personally am not sure which way they're going to go. I think, honestly, it should be more towards this side of it. But based on the fact St. Louis isn't exactly playing great right now. I think it's more in here. Winnipeg. Winnipeg fans are pretty happy. I think they'd like to see an addition at the deadline. But I think the Dubois for Laine and Roslovic deal has worked out pretty well. Roslovic's done pretty well in Columbus. Everybody's focusing on Laine, which I understand. Laine's the big name. Roslovic's been pretty solid, though, in Columbus. I think he's been better in Columbus than he was in Winnipeg. So, for me, the Jets, yeah, likely very happy with the way things are going right now. They're cruising along. They could end up finishing first in the North. And then, again, playoffs, who knows what's going to happen. St. Louis. St. Louis, I feel like they're kind of... I'll have them closer to the panic side than the happy side, just because they're in a rut. Now, of course, guys have started getting healthy, right? Doesn't necessarily mean a team pulls out of that rut when the guys start getting healthy, because your team has to readjust then. You've adjusted to those guys not being in the lineup, and now you have to adjust to those guys coming back into the lineup. So for St. Louis, I've kind of got them closer to the panic side of things. Pittsburgh's happy right now. Pittsburgh showed that they own the Islanders. Pittsburgh has shown that they're going to be a playoff team. And then it's a matter of what happens with them in the playoffs. And notice, Capitals and Penguins are right next to each other. We know they're going to meet in the playoffs. We can act surprised when it happens, but it's going to happen. We're going to see a Pittsburgh-Washington, either first round or maybe second round. And I'm down for it. I think that'll be great if/when that happens. Tampa. Now, because the defending Stanley Cup champions, there isn't much pressure on them. There also really aren't very many teams that are challenging them right now in terms of just, they look really good. Now injuries could have pushed them down a little bit here, but they're first. And the injuries aren't seen as long-term to their blue liners, so things should be getting better if you're a Tampa Bay Lightning fan over the next week. No reason to be anywhere near the panic index. New Jersey. I think New Jersey's under here too. So I'll put New Jersey with Detroit over here under the sleepy, waiting for the draft. I think for New Jersey, they had a lot of draft picks last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get more first-rounders this year and just stockpile the prospects, which I think would make New Jersey fans pretty darn happy. We'll see if Gusev ends up having any kind of interest at the deadline either. It looks like he's completely played his way out of their lineup, but again, for New Jersey, they're likely good for right now. Nashville. Nashville, I'm going to put them kind of towards the happy side of this. The thing is, of course, it's an older team, and there's going to be some who would like to see them kind of tear it down and start to do a retool or anticipate that rebuild being needed, but not for right now. And again, with the amount of money they're spending on their players, I can totally understand why Poyle's not looking at any kind of a rebuild. It puts his job in jeopardy as well. So, for Nashville, they're 18-17-1 now. They've cruised into fourth place in that division. And honestly, as long as they have a decent record from here, they don't even have to be that much above 500 in terms of their point percentage. They should make the playoffs. And then, who knows? They won't have any pressure when they get to the playoffs. Montreal. Montreal, I'm going to put them right... maybe more towards the panic side because of the squash schedule. So, not panicked in terms of fans being worried about making the playoffs. Montreal should make the playoffs. But with this absolutely insane schedule where you've got, 25 games in 43 nights, that's going to wear a team out. And it's possible that once they get to said playoffs as fourth place, they may have no gas left. They might have 3 or 4 major stars that are injured because of this horrible schedule. So, but again, it's 2021. Everybody's got rough spots in the schedule. It's just theirs is at the end. So for Montreal, I think there's more towards the panic because it is a lot of games in a short period of time. And it'll be interesting to see how they do and how they come out of this in terms of injury side of things. Minnesota. I think there's a lot of happiness in Minnesota. So I'll put them equivalent to Winnipeg and the New York Islanders. Kaprizov's been exactly as advertised, and he's rejuvenated the career of Victor Rask. And while he was at it, he paired up with Zuccarello, one of the more likable guys in the NHL, and they have instant chemistry. There are a lot of reasons to be excited if you're a Minnesota fan, and this is a team that I might be concerned about in the playoffs as a first-round opponent. They may very well be capable of knocking off one of the top teams in the West. I mean, we see upsets every year. Minnesota may be capable of pulling one off. Kakkonen has been very good in net. And again, Kaprizov is capable of taking over the game. It's an element that Minnesota didn't have last year that they do this year. Colorado. Avs fans are very happy with the way things are going. There's no reason to be concerned in Colorado. Forwards, got them. Defense, fine. Goaltending, it's worked itself out. Grubauer, it turns out, was pretty good. So, and I was never one that advocated for replacing Grubauer anyways, so I've been right there saying, yeah, Grubauer's a pretty good goaltender. And yeah, they're pretty happy, I would say, in Colorado. Anaheim. So the Ducks, they're right over here. Yeah, I'll just put them underneath, but it's the same. They're also waiting for the draft. Anaheim, I don't think there's any delusions that this team can suddenly go on a 10-game run or anything like that. And I think that game against Colorado last night really drove that home. And yes, where during that game you're like, we're really far behind these guys. Not just score-wise, but talent, speed. They're really fast. We need to be like, can you guys be faster? Can I get new players? Did I say that out loud? So yeah, Anaheim's waiting till next year. Columbus. You know what? I'm going to put Columbus a little bit below panic and a little bit more towards angry. And it's funny because Tortorella now is the lightning rod for it. But I think it's a general frustration that Columbus, it felt like they were finally relevant, that this was a team that was finally experiencing continued success in the NHL. They were going to be in the playoffs every year. And now this year it's just kind of fallen apart. And it's been coming for a while. And at first it was, okay, so Dubois is useless. They'll get rid of him. And he goes off to Winnipeg. All right, so they got Laine and Roslovic. Roslovic's really good. As I said, definitely fits in. And I think if you look at it as a Dubois for Roslovic trade, I think it's about even. Dubois is the better forward. I'm not crazy. And then Laine, is that a negative impact or a positive impact? Either way, Columbus, I think there's some anger right there. I've seen the comments about Tortorella, so a little bit beyond panic and a little bit more towards anger. The panic part of the index isn't that important today. Dallas. Panic. Yeah, it's panic. And you know what? I mean, they had a run to the Stanley Cup final last year. They were not going to be able to follow that up. I know there's a lot of injuries. I know there's some key guys that are out. Radulov's played 11 games so far this year. Sagan's been out all year. Bishop's been out all year. But I don't think goaltending's been their problem. I think Ottinger's acquitted himself pretty darn well. And the scoring was an issue last year during the regular season with Radulov. So Dallas is just a team that it still feels like they're kind of finding themselves. There's a lot of good young talent there. And it's funny with Dallas because it feels like the kids are playing really well. It's the veterans that need to step it up. And whether that's just perception or reality, it's going to be interesting to see what Jim Nill does in the offseason with Dallas because they're not making the playoffs. Toronto, they're pretty darn happy right now. So I'll put them on this line here. And they have every reason to be. Now, the one reason why you may want to put Toronto there is goaltending, right? The idea that, well, without Freddie Anderson, or with Freddie Anderson's a problem. No, Jack Campbell. Well, Jack Campbell's not a starter. Well, what if they have to go to Hutchinson? So it depends on what day of the week it is that you're talking about Toronto. But I'm going to go ahead and look at the optimistic side and say, you know what? They've got a good chance of finishing in the top 2 in the division. At the very worst. Probably number 3 at the worst. And Toronto, they have a very good roster. They have a better defense than they get credit for. And I think that Freddie Anderson's still capable of finding his game. And yeah, we'll see what happens with Toronto this year. But I still think most fans should be in this area. I know there will be some, though, that are in this area because of the goaltending concern, right? Vancouver, honestly, it's probably right down here. I'll put them on the same level as St. Louis and Montreal. I think Vancouver fans understand it's not happening. Right? They're not making the playoffs. The concern is, how is Jim Benning going to approach the trade deadline? How is Jim Benning going to approach things in the offseason? Is he going to continue this patchwork kind of lineup, overpaying on contracts, and robbing the team of some of the depth that other contending teams have that the Canucks just don't have? Because they spend so much money on players that they probably shouldn't have been willing to spend that money on. Vancouver's going to have to find some value in the offseason, and they're going to have to find a way to keep Pettersson, Hughes, and Demko happy and stay under the cap. And so with this going on, the team is still, they're tied with Calgary for 5th in the division. They're only 2 points behind Montreal, but with the amount of games they've played compared to Montreal, it's unlikely that those 6 games are all going to be regulation losses for Montreal. So, yeah, for Vancouver, it really depends on your perspective, but yeah, I have them closer to the panic side than the happiness side there. Vegas has got to be happy. They just do. Now they've got Leonard back. He's healthy. He's winning. They've got Leonard. They've got Fleury. Fleury, he's a pretty darn good goaltender. Scoring, tons of that. Their defense, underrated. And this is without Pietrangelo. So once Pietrangelo's back in there, their status as one of the Stanley Cup favorites is still pretty well intact. They in Colorado seem to be on a collision course for round 2. And if that happens, I'm there for it. That'll be great. Rangers, Rangers, it's honestly tough to tell because from one week to the next, is there pressure on them? So I'm going to hedge a bit. I'm going to put them here, which is more towards happy than panicked. So they've got Lafreniere, they've got Kakko, they've got 2 good young forwards that are going to be building pieces going forward, right? Building blocks going forward. They've got Keandre Miller stepping in as a excellent rookie this year, playing very well, and Adam Fox, another good young defenseman. And now they've got other players coming in as well. There's other rookies coming in for them too. And so we'll see how good it is. But they've got a young goaltending tandem. Everything looks pretty good for the Rangers. And I don't think it matters if they make the playoffs or they don't this year. The fact that they're still kind of in this is a testament to their ability to bounce back from what was... They've had some lows this year. But again, I don't have Rangers fans as all giddy. But I think they're mildly optimistic. And if they make a run at it, great. And if they don't, I don't think that's going to bother people either. Oilers. I'll put them on the same line as Toronto. I think Oiler fans probably very happy with the way things have gone. Again, there may be just some nagging concerns with Edmonton. Just nibbling around the edges there. Depth scoring being a nagging concern. It's one that the Bruins have as well. And so probably optimism that, yes, they're going to get to the playoffs. That won't be a problem. But then what happens in the playoffs is where the question mark comes in. And goaltending may very well be part of that too. Boston. I'm going to put Boston, honestly, more towards the panic side. And here's why. So they came out of the COVID pause and they didn't play great. And then there's the 5 games against New Jersey. They haven't scored 5-on-5. In terms of goals scored 5-on-5 this year, I saw a chart this morning that has them, I think, 30th out of 31. It was either 29th or 30th out of 31 in terms of goals per game 5-on-5. This team can't score. So they will only go as far as their defense and their goaltending will take them. And if they have any kind of injury to their perfection line, as it's called by everybody who's not me, then they're kind of toast. And that's a big problem. So I think there's some panic with the Bruins because this is probably their last really good chance at it. And so far this year, they had an excellent start, and it's kind of fallen apart since then. So they are capable of getting it back together, but for right now, yeah, I'd put them more on the panic side. Calgary. Well, Calgary, I'll put you guys back under panic. When they picked up Darryl Sutter, that helped the defense, and I still think it has, even though last night Winnipeg tore it apart. It's Winnipeg. But they're kind of falling back into a lot of the same patterns they were under the previous coach. And I don't know how confident Flames fans are right now in this team. And again, I understand why they wouldn't feel all that confident. I think the Flames on paper probably have a better team than Vancouver, but they haven't played like it. And Markstrom's been pulled, I think they said 4 times so far this year. He was never pulled in Vancouver last year. He hasn't looked the same. But is that Markstrom or is that the Flames' defense that's not as good? And if that's the case, then are we underrating Vancouver's defense? I think it's more Markstrom's had some struggles here and there in Calgary along the lines of what he was having in Vancouver, I want to say 3 years ago. Markstrom has gotten better every year in Vancouver, and then he became a UFA, and he goes to Calgary, and now he's into struggling again. So, yeah, I understand the panic in Calgary, and probably good reason for it. Florida, I'm going to put him here. Now, here's the thing with Florida. Florida, very happy with the way that things have gone this year. Very happy that they're top 3 in the league. However, they've lost Aaron Ekblad. Aaron Ekblad on that blue line is far more important than people who don't watch the Florida Panthers would know. He's great at the defensive end and the offensive end. The goals were coming for him this year. And honestly, he probably would have got some Norris consideration. Probably not top 3, but probably top 10. And he probably would have, after this season, garnered more attention for the Norris in future seasons. So with his injury, to me, that pulls Florida from where I would have had him last week, which would have been here, and it pulls him right into the middle. So still optimistic, but they're down Barkov, they're down Hornqvist, and now Ekblad. And Ekblad's one that, as huge as losing Barkov is, and it's huge, because of the length of the injury to Ekblad, that to me pulls them down on the panic index to this level here. Kings. I'll put the Kings under this question mark here. The Kings are close enough to the playoffs that they can think about it. And last night they came out and they started that game against Vegas like they really are thinking about making the playoffs. But then they ended up finishing the game like a team that doesn't really have a lot of interest in making the playoffs. And for the Kings, again, it's a rebuild that they've been going through. There's a lot of good young players there. So there's not really any pressure on them to make the playoffs this year. But if the spot is there for the taking, if St. Louis keeps falling, do you want to go get it? So that's the question that I would have for the Kings right now. And so that's why they're under the questioning emoji. Arizona. Arizona, right now, I'm going to put them here. I think Arizona, there's good reason for optimism. This is a team that's kind of, got some wins together, and they're in the running. They're in the running for that final playoff spot, and I think they have to feel pretty good about themselves and their ability to maybe take that spot from St. Louis. They've kind of crept up, as well as St. Louis creeping down, of course. And so we'll see. We'll see whether or not Arizona can fulfill the hopes and dreams of those who are optimistic about the Coyotes. It would be fun to see them in the playoffs. It would be a lot of fun to see like a Vegas-Arizona or a Colorado-Arizona rematch from last year, or Vegas and Arizona, a battle in the desert in the first round. I think that'd be great. So no matter who would finish first between Colorado and Vegas, if Arizona's the team waiting for them, that's fun. Not that St. Louis wouldn't have reason to really enjoy playing Colorado in a first-round matchup, and not that wouldn't be very popular in the U.S. Ottawa, they're still here. Ottawa's still there. And notice these 4 teams that I have under the waiting for the playoffs heading, all of them are teams that missed the play-in round last fall. So this is not unexpected that Ottawa would still probably be under here. But there's no panic. There's no there is definitely some excitement there with how some of the young players have played, but there's still a lot of young players yet to come up. And so I have Ottawa under. They're not really worried about it. Chicago. Chicago's a tough call. I'm kind of tempted to put them here. I'm almost tempted to put them here. I'm going to put them there. They weren't expected to be in the playoffs. Then they had a really good start. Now they've kind of fallen apart again. So at the trade deadline, Stan Bowman, what do? Are you looking to bring somebody in because you think this team can make a run? Or are you looking at the standings and saying, you know what, if we take a run, we're just going to get destroyed in the first round? Take the Brian Burke approach, right? Like, well, we can fight our way into the playoffs, we'll just get killed there. Which is an odd way of putting it. And I think he's the only general manager that's ever actually said that out loud. But I think for Chicago, I'm not sure where you go from here, and it'll be interesting to see what the general manager does at the deadline. He's got some cap space if he wants to make a move, right? And for Chicago, that spot is there. Nashville looks like they're ready to take it away from them, but it's still there. You can still add and maybe, go on a little bit of a push. They could use another goaltender. Just throwing that out there. Lankinen's been very good again, But it kind of feels like for Subban, it's kind of fallen off the rails a bit. So if they want to make the playoffs, maybe they need to make another move there. Odd as that may sound, because Chicago, it's the spot's there for them. It is. And then the last team to put up, Carolina. Carolina, I'll move this over just a little bit. I'm going to put Carolina right there. A friendly giant you over, you over, you over there. There. All this high-tech stuff, huh? And Carolina. What's not to like? Now, for Carolina, the only panic might be the fact that they may not end up keeping Dougie Hamilton. Dougie Hamilton's contract is up at the end of the season. He's on a 14-game point streak. I'll bet you he wants a lot of money. And I'll bet you Carolina doesn't really want to pay him an absolute ton of money. Because there's a lot of good young players here. There's a lot of expensive contracts coming up. And they're going to try to save some money wherever they can. And so they may play a little bit of hardball with Dougie Hamilton. Dougie proved when he was in Boston, if he believes he's worth a certain figure, he'll get it. And I respect that. Boston traded him, and he got that somewhere else. But, yeah, we'll see if he stays in Carolina. But in terms of where this team is at and where they were expected to be, Carolina's exceeded all expectations, and they have tremendous depth up front on the blue line and in net. So there you go. Your panic index for March 30th of 2021. There you go. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support, and do not forget, click like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'll talk to you guys again soon.